Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're doing a deep dive into something I think a lot of you encounter when you're, mastering English conversation.
Right, that whole area of agreeing and disagreeing, how to do it smoothly, politely.
Exactly. It's one thing to just say yes or no,
Mhm.
but sounding natural, sounding respectful,
Mm,
especially when you maybe don't quite see eye to eye, that takes a bit more skill, doesn't it?
it really does. And the source material we're drawing from today, it's excellent. It's all focused on polite communication in English.
So our mission here, it's pretty straightforward, but I think really valuable. We're pulling out practical phrases, actual approaches you can use.
Think of it like upgrading your conversation toolkit. So you sound confident, clear,
Sure.
whether you're all in agreement or, need to push back gently.
And this is so useful, especially if you're an intermediate learner, right? Getting beyond those basic yes-no responses.
Absolutely. Using these different phrases helps you sound much more natural, at work, in class, just chatting with friends.
And the sources are great because they give really concrete examples, like what to say.
And crucially, what not to say. And maybe a bit about the why behind it, too.
Okay, so let's start with agreement. Full-on agreement. It's got to be more than just, yes, I agree, right? What do the sources suggest to make that stronger?
Well, you want to show you're really connecting, not just hearing. So things like, I totally agree, or that's a great point.
Yeah, totally adds that emphasis and great point sort of validates their thinking.
Exactly. And I really I couldn't agree more. That's idiomatic, isn't it?
It is. It means you agree 100%. Impossible to agree more. It feels quite strong, quite natural.
You're absolutely right is another good one. Again, that absolutely boosts it.
And that's exactly how I feel. That one connects it right to your own perspective. Makes it personal.
Sometimes it's about shared experience, too. Like, yes, I've noticed that, too. It shows you reach the same conclusion independently.
Adds a bit of weight, yeah. Or even just the warm, simple, that makes a lot of sense. Shows you get their logic.
And for more casual situations, the sources mention things like, same here, or even, I was just thinking that, very spontaneous, very friendly.
Okay, but it's not always full agreement, is it? What about when you kind of see their point, but you're not fully on board, or
Right.
you only agree with part of it? The source calls this neutral or soft agreement. Why is that important to have phrases for?
Oh, it's essential. It lets you acknowledge the other person's view without committing fully, keeps things collaborative.
Right, so phrases like, I guess that's true, or maybe, I can see your point.
Perfect. They show you've heard them, processed it, even if you're not totally sold yet.
What about that sounds reasonable? Or, yeah, that could work.
Those work too. They suggest you're considering it or that it's a valid option, even if maybe not your first choice.
And for being really clear about partial agreement,
The sources suggest things like, I agree to some extent, which is quite precise, or maybe you might be right about that.
might be right. That's quite polite, isn't it? It hints you're not fully convinced, but leaves the door open.
Exactly. Now, the really tricky bit often feels like disagreeing politely. It's just so easy to sound blunt. Just saying, I disagree can feel abrupt.
Definitely. And the sources really stress this in many English-speaking contexts. Being too direct can come across badly.
Yeah, the key is often about softening. And one of the best ways, acknowledge their point before you give yours.
Yes, I saw that. That's a great takeaway. Starting with something like, I see what you mean, but I think.
Or, that's an interesting point, however, I'm not sure I completely agree. You validate first.
Right. Or, I understand your opinion, but I actually have a different perspective. So you show you've heard them.
And some phrases explicitly signal respect, like, I respect that, but I see it differently. Or maybe that could be true, but from my experience, you tie your differing view to your own background.
You could also soften it just with hesitant language, can't you? Like, I'm not sure that's always the case. The not sure just takes the edge off.
It does, and asking a question can work wonders. I get that, but don't you think? It invites them to look at it differently with you.
Or offering an alternative view, clearly. I see your point, but here's another way to look at it. Framing it as just another way feels much less confrontational.
The source material even flags a category called disagree plus respect. How does that play out?
It's really about making it crystal clear you value their view, even while holding your own. Things like, I get your perspective, and I think maybe both sides have some validity.
Yeah, that's good. It validates them fully before you maybe add your own thoughts. Or even, that's a fair point, but I still think.
Ooh, I like. Interesting. I hadn't thought about it quite like that. True, but at the same time, it shows you're actually engaging, maybe even learning, but your position stands, which is fine.
Fair enough. Still, I feel that's another strong one. Concedes validity, fair enough, but gently holds your ground.
And critically, the sources are very clear on what not to say if politeness is the goal. Avoid those really blunt phrases, right?
Absolutely. Things like, that's wrong, or you don't know what you're talking about.
Or even just, that makes no sense. Definitely avoid those.
And certainly steer clear of things like, I disagree. End of story.
Yeah, the why is pretty obvious, isn't it?
Yeah.
They're just dismissive. They shut down the conversation.
Exactly. The whole point of polite disagreement is to keep the conversation going, even with different views. All these phrases we've discussed, they help soften things, keep the dynamic positive.
So, wrapping up our deep dive today, using these different phrases for agreement and disagreement, it's not just about, bigger vocabulary. For you listening, especially if English fluency is your goal, it's about nuance.
It's about showing respect, keeping conversations flowing, sanding. Well, less like you're translating in your head and more like a natural, confident speaker.
So maybe pick just 2 or 3 phrases we talked about today. Perhaps one for soft agreement, one for polite disagreement, and actually try using them this week. See how it feels.
And here's a little challenge straight from the sources. Can you practice saying, I disagree, but in a way that genuinely still sounds friendly? It's trickier than it seems.
It really is. And maybe that leaves us with a final thought to chew on. How much does just choosing your words carefully actually change the whole feeling of a conversation, even when you hold different opinions?
That's a great question. And hey, if you know someone else navigating these conversational waters in English, maybe share this deep dive with them.